Everyone, if you have ever reached out to your financial advisor and asked about investing in Bitcoin, you have probably gotten an answer very similar to the answer that everyone seems to get when they ask their financial advisor about investing in Bitcoin. So I want to walk through what that answer is, why they tell you that, and what it means. Okay, so first of all, Bitcoin, investing in one of the Bitcoin exchange traded funds, ETFs, is a fantastic way to invest in Bitcoin. The big ones are BlackRock's IBIT, and the other one is the Fidelity Bitcoin ETF, which is BTC. F is in Fidelity. BTC, SBTC. Okay, so great way to invest in Bitcoin. You can invest via an IRA, a Roth IRA, a 401k, a 403b, a rollover IRA. Great opportunities. But if you reach out to your financial advisor, they don't want to do it. And let me tell you the reasons they don't want to do it. But first, let me tell you what they're going to tell you. The first thing they're going to tell you is they're going to say you are already invested in Bitcoin by your investments in the broad stock market, which is technically true, but irrelevant. So, for example, Tesla has, let's call it $1 billion of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but the company is worth, I don't know, $1 trillion. I didn't look it up, but some very large number. So it's true that 1/1000th of the value of Tesla is Bitcoin. And it is true that I believe Tesla's in the Fortune 500. And therefore, it is technically true that if you're invested in the Fortune 500, you are invested in Bitcoin. But it is such a ridiculously small percentage of your total investments that it's a completely irrelevant part. So anyone that tells you you're already invested in Bitcoin because you're invested in the NASDAQ, or the Dow Jones Industrial Average, or the S&P 500, or a broad stock market index that is honestly a ridiculous answer, because the total exposure to Bitcoin from those investments is a tiny fraction of 1%. Maybe it's 1/100th of 1%, maybe it's 1/10th of 1%, but it's honestly just a ridiculously small percentage of a fraction of 1%. Okay. But it is still technically true. It's just irrelevant because it's so small that even if Bitcoin went up 100x, you wouldn't even notice it on your investments. Okay, the second thing they're going to tell you, so that is a bad answer. The second thing they're going to tell you is it's super risky. Now, Bitcoin is not super risky. Maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it was risky, but it has been massively de-risked. It is now a $2 trillion asset. Never in the history of mankind has a $2 trillion asset ultimately gone to zero. There's a lot of other things that have gone to zero, but nothing that is of the size and magnitude of Bitcoin. Things just don't get as big as the size and magnitude of Bitcoin and then go to zero. So there are lots of risky things to invest in artificial intelligence. There are lots of risky things to invest in that are in the crypto world. Crypto meaning everything that's not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, but when people talk about crypto, they typically mean all of the junk meme coins and Ethereum and Solana and XRP and all that sort of stuff. Yes, it is true. All of those things are very risky, but Bitcoin is not one of those things. It doesn't mean it's no risk. It is just radically lower risk. So if your financial advisor groups Bitcoin with crypto, or groups Bitcoin with AI, or groups Bitcoin with anything else, that is an uninformed approach to things. So, because they ought to know better. I mean, they just ought to know better. Okay, so why are financial advisors so ignorant of Bitcoin? The reason is they do not make money off Bitcoin. If you are invested in the assets that they manage for you, typically they get 1% of your assets. And it doesn't matter if your assets go up or down. Regardless, you could have the worst year ever, they're still going to get 1% of your assets. You can have the best year ever. They're going to get 1% of your assets. I mean, you could lose in a major economic downturn, 45% of your stock market value. They're still going to get 1% of whatever's left. So they have a very strong financial incentive to keep you invested in the things that they actively manage, because that is how they make money. So anytime a financial advisor moves money from one of the actively managed portfolios that they have it in over to Bitcoin, they lose that 1% because they are not actively managing that asset for you. The same is true if you called up your financial advisor and said, I want 100 shares of Microsoft or Apple or Amazon or Tesla or Nvidia or Google. If you invest in any individual stock, they also don't want they you do not the financial advisor does not get that 1%. So the financial advisors have a very strong incentive to not want you to invest in individual things because they lose the 1% of anything that you invest in that they are not actively managing for you. Now, that does not mean that, the financial planner is evil. It doesn't mean they have, bad intentions. It just means they have a strong financial incentive for you not to do that. So the reason that financial advisors do not recommend you invest in Bitcoin is because they are ignorant about Bitcoin. So why are they ignorant about Bitcoin? They are ignorant because they have a negative financial incentive to educate themselves. If they educate themselves about Bitcoin and if they realize it's a good investment, then they feel compelled to tell you to invest in it. But the problem is, if you invest in it, they lose that 1% that they get on your assets for any money that you invest in it. So again, I'm not saying it's malicious. I'm just saying that is the incentive. And there's a very famous saying, I forget who it's attributed to, but there's a very famous saying, there's it is very difficult to get a man to understand something when his financial livelihood depends on him not understanding it. Right? So if your financial livelihood is dependent on you not understanding something, then it's very hard to get you to understand it. And there's no incentive to research it. So very few financial advisors spend any time researching Bitcoin. And the reason is because they have no financial incentive to research Bitcoin. And it's because if they understand Bitcoin and then feel compelled to tell you it's a good idea, they lose money when you invest in Bitcoin. You probably, I believe, many people believe, will make a ton of money from Bitcoin. At least that let's just say it's not get rich quick or anything like that. I just believe, and a gazillion other people do as well, that Bitcoin will outperform everything else you could possibly be invested in the long term. That's what I believe. Okay. So, but again, they do. So you are much better financially if you have been invested in Bitcoin for the last 10 years as compared to any other asset. You are way better off. The problem is your financial advisor is not better off because they have not been getting that 1% that they get over and over and over every single year, no matter what. So again, if you wonder sort of why are financial advisors advising against it, one, they have a fiduciary responsibility of protecting their clients from scams and sort of bad investing behavior. But again, that is not Bitcoin. So I would agree with them saying, yeah, you should not put all your retirement in Nvidia or in Tesla or in whatever. And I don't recommend people put their entire investment in Bitcoin either. As I always say, I am not a licensed or accredited financial advisor, tax advisor, lawyer, accountant. I'm none of those things. But I think it is my opinion as an individual in a world of free speech that something like 20% or 30% of a retirement fund for somebody who's got, plenty of years ahead of them and plenty of time to make money and plenty of time to adapt to changes in the economic landscape, I think that makes a ton of sense because you 10x or 100x 20 or 30%, that's a huge amount of money. 10x 1%, it literally changes your retirement by 10%. If you 10x 1%, it's only 10%, which is not that much. So again, financial advisors have a very strong incentive to steer you away from anything that they don't get fees on. And frankly, other than Bitcoin, I would generally agree with them. So if somebody called me out of the blue and said, my financial advisor is discouraging me from investing in XRP or Ethereum or Solana or the Trump meme coin or Nvidia stock, I would say, well, I generally agree with those. Each of those are risky investments. Each of those, especially meme coins, could go to zero. Things like the Trump coin and XRP almost certainly will go to zero. Nvidia will probably be outcompeted by some other company at some point. Maybe not, but they could. But all of those things are risks that do not apply to Bitcoin for all of the reasons I've covered on more than 200 videos so far that I've posted on Facebook. So in those more than 200 videos, I've covered in depth why Bitcoin will not be outcompeted, why Bitcoin is here to stay, why nothing that has reached a market value of $2 trillion has ever then subsequently gone away, and why I think Bitcoin is not a risky investment, like any of those individual things. So again, when it comes to Bitcoin, financial advisors should educate themselves. It is the fastest growing financial asset in the world for the last 10 years, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years. If you are a financial advisor, shame on you if you are ignorant of Bitcoin. You should not call yourself an accredited financial investor if you are not well versed in Bitcoin. That's ridiculous. It's a $2 trillion asset class. It is literally the seventh largest asset in the entire world. If you are in the world of investments and financial advisement and all of that, you should understand that. Now, that doesn't mean you have to recommend it to your clients. That's entirely up to you. It's based on your judgment of the facts, your judgment of your client's risk tolerance and all that sort of stuff. But you should not be ignorant. The seventh largest asset class in the world. If you are ignorant of it, that is your fault. So let me recap here and then I'll think if I have any other thoughts. So the recap is, let me get a drink and I'll recap. Okay, so the recap is financial advisors have a very strong incentive to tell you not to invest in Bitcoin. They have a very strong financial incentive to remain ignorant about Bitcoin. And they have a very strong financial incentive to group Bitcoin with risky things like AI or individual stocks like Nvidia or Tesla or things like that. They have or crypto or meme coins or whatever. They have a very strong financial incentive to do that. They have a responsibility, in my opinion, to educate themselves about every financial asset because they are claiming to you to be well versed in financial assets. And that's what they're supposed to be doing. So if I'm in the world of technology and I'm completely ignorant of AI, you would say, how did you miss AI? Like AI is a huge deal. Like if you're a technologist who likes to be on the cutting edge of everything, you should understand Bitcoin. You should understand AI. Like now, I think AI is way too risky of an investment for people for all reasons I've covered in other videos. But the same is not true of Bitcoin for the reasons, again, I've covered in a gazillion Bitcoin, videos. So all of that to say, there is one and only one good reason why a financial advisor would not invest your money in Bitcoin, and that is if they are not allowed to. So a lot of the investment advisors, their regulatory compliance teams have issued guidance on Bitcoin that does allow them to invest in Bitcoin, including BlackRock, which is the largest money manager in the entire world. Same with Fidelity, same with Franklin Templeton, same with, there's a ton of them, right? So bunch of the wealth advisors and wealth advisor networks, which if you're part of a specific group, you can only recommend products to clients that are approved by that group. And if you recommend client products that are not approved by the group, then you're not covered under their risk insurance. So if that is the case with your financial advisor, that is totally legitimate and that is totally understandable. In that situation, they should not tell you that it's, you're already invested in Bitcoin. They should not tell you because again, it's such a ridiculously small percentage of the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or the Dow that it's completely irrelevant. They should not tell you that. They should not tell you that it's super risky and you should avoid it. They should not tell you any of those things. What they should tell you is, I'm glad you're looking into Bitcoin. They can share whatever their opinion is. And they should tell you, unfortunately, I can't invest your money in Bitcoin. I wish I could, but I can't because my regulatory compliance team, the platform that we use, will not allow it. Now, that is perfectly legitimate. If they are, if they are not legally allowed, the platform provider that they use or the regulatory compliance people that they have their insurance or their licenses with, if they will not allow them to recommend or invest in a Bitcoin ETF, that is totally legitimate, but they should be upfront about that. They should tell you that that is the reason that they are not allowed to put your money into Bitcoin, rather than these roundabout answers, which display either, in my opinion, it is disingenuous to tell somebody, it is absolutely disingenuous to tell somebody that they already are invested in Bitcoin if they are only invested in the broad stock market. That, again, that's completely ridiculous. Or if they tell you it's super risky like AI, or it's super risky like crypto, or super risky like meme stocks or meme coins or whatever, again, that is ignorant. So, to recap the reasons, if they tell you you're already invested in Bitcoin, that's bogus. If they tell you that it's risky, that's ignorant. If they tell you they can't, that is legitimate, assuming that they're actually accurate on that fact. Now, a lot of people actually can invest in the Bitcoin ETFs. They just don't want to research it, so they tell you they can't. So, but if they have researched it and if they legitimately cannot invest in the Bitcoin ETFs, then of course that is a very legitimate reason to tell you that they can't, because they can't. And there literally is nothing they can do about it unless they completely changed over all of their systems and the platform they use. And obviously that's not a reasonable request for a financial advisor. If they've built their entire business on a specific provider of investment products, they're certainly not going to move to a different provider just so that you can invest in a Bitcoin ETF. So that is completely understandable. So if I get a little fired up about this topic, it's because the financial investor, the certified financial planner market is, in my opinion, radically overpaid for the value they create. So, and part of that is, I've had experience personally with financial advisors who, over a very extended period of time, only delivered a return to me of 3%. So the total return on the portfolio was 4%. They took one of those 4% and left me with 3%. So I've got a portfolio here that's more than a decade old, and literally one quarter of the returns of the entire portfolio have gone to the financial advisor. Now, if you want to get somebody fired up, I tell them over more than a decade that the total returns from a portfolio are 4%, and they only get to keep 3% annually because the financial advisor took a quarter of the money. That sounds crazy. That's ridiculous. I mean, who on earth pays somebody a quarter of the total returns of the portfolio to park it in a fund they don't even manage? It literally just sits there and other people somewhere manage it. So it gets me fired up, especially when financial advisors say things that are not true, like you're already invested in Bitcoin if you're invested in the S&P 500. Give me a break. That's ridiculous. Your exposure is like 1/110th or 1/100th of 1% of your portfolio. That's just crazy. Or they tell you it's super risky and they compare it to AI or crypto or meme coins or meme stocks. Come on, it's just ignorant. I have a low tolerance for ignorance. Um, if they literally can't do it, they should just be upfront about that, and that's totally forgivable. So, hope all this helps. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.